Thank you, Minister. That concludes the debate on progressing National Advisory Council on Women and Girls' recommendations on equality. It's now time to move on to the next item of business, which is a statement by Kate Forbes on Alexander Dennis Limited. The Deputy First Minister will take questions at the end of her statement, and so there should be no interventions or interruptions. And I call on the Deputy First Minister.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. This statement concerns the announcement made last week by Alexander Dennis Limited, ADL, regarding a new strategy for its UK manufacturing operations. And I want to be as open as possible, both in this statement but also in subsequent follow-up conversations with members. I recognise that this is a hugely worrying time for the workforce at ADL, their families and the wider community in Falkirk and Larbert. And I have shared with the unions who represent that workforce my commitment to leave no stone unturned in securing a future for the company and the workforce. The company is a significant employer and supports a highly valuable supply chain. Our focus right now is in supporting the business as well as the communities around that business. In recent weeks, the First Minister and I, with the support of the Transport Secretary in many cases, have engaged extensively with Alexander Dennis and its parent company, NFI, to understand the issues and express our commitment to explore every possible avenue. We first spoke with ADL about these specific proposals on the 25th of May, and I believe the company informed the UK Government at the same time. Directors of Alexander Dennis were open about the challenges posed by international competition, but they also spoke of the strength of potential demand over the coming years as bus operators across the UK pivot towards net zero. In response to market dynamics, ADL is proposing to consolidate its UK bus manufacturing operations into a single site. The company believes that consolidation will ensure financial sustainability and lower operating costs in the face of changing and challenging market conditions. Under current proposals, manufacturing in Falkirk would be discontinued and the site closed, whilst production at Larbert would be suspended upon the completion of current contracts. The statutory consultation, therefore, places up to 400 roles at potential risk of redundancy, nearly one quarter of ADL's entire workforce. We are determined to help the business find an alternative to that route and to find different ways to meet market challenges through investment and improved performance. A key part of that is the ability of ADL to secure future orders. And that's why we are working closely with the company to identify and secure a forward pipeline of demand for high-quality buses from Scottish and UK customers. Confidence in the demand pipeline is critical in both the short and longer term, and we recognise that a clear future pipeline of orders is the key to securing the future of bus manufacturing in Scotland. While the Scottish Government is exploring all possible opportunities to ensure a healthy pipeline in Scotland, clearly the bus market in the rest of the United Kingdom is substantially larger. Since 2020, Alexander Dennis have secured orders for 361 zero-emission buses, more than any other single manufacturer through Transport Scotland's Scottish Zero-Emission Bus Challenge Fund and its predecessor, the Scottish Ultra-Low Emission Bus Scheme. ADL has received £58 million of Scottish Government subsidy for vehicles under these programmes. ADL and bus production are synonymous, with over a century of manufacturing excellence and innovation growing from Walter Alexander's original coachworks in Falkirk. Across this chamber, I'm sure that we all respect the proud history and recognise the continuing significance of the company within the local economy. But this is not just a local issue. ADL draws on and is supported by a much larger and wider supply chain. In the last 5 years, Alexander Dennis has spent over £1 billion with its 1,000 suppliers in all parts of the United Kingdom. The company's own analysis suggests that for every job in a bus manufacturing, there is a multiplier of 3 to 4 jobs in the wider supply chain and support services. A just transition requires that we retain the capacity to build low and zero-emission buses as a key part of the transition to a low-carbon economy, to retain good green jobs and skills. Buses connect communities all across Scotland, and travelling by bus is already one of the greenest transport choices that people can make. So transforming our bus networks from older diesel to zero emissions contributes not only to our emissions reduction targets, but also improves air quality and reduces harmful noise pollution. Our policy interventions to date have been designed to accelerate uptake of zero-emission buses into the Scottish market. With our investment of over £150 million, Scotland now has a higher proportion of zero-emission buses than any other part of the United Kingdom outside London. In 2024, 14% of all buses in Scotland were zero-emission, compared with only 7.4% in England. In addition to supporting operators to embrace zero-emission buses, we also invested directly with Alexander Dennis. Scottish Enterprise has a strong 10-year-plus strategic partnership with Alexander Dennis and has supported the company with technology development, skills and cultural transformation over many years. And I think it was clear from the letter from Alexander Dennis just how much they valued that ongoing support. Over the last 10 years, Scottish Enterprise has awarded £30.5 million in research and development support to ADL as a contribution towards £120 million of R&D spend by the company. Those grants have supported the development of ultra-low emission and zero-emission technologies at ADL. Scottish Enterprise and Transport Scotland continue to provide ongoing support to the company, both directly and through support for the adoption of zero-emission buses. And so, Presiding Officer, I now turn to the Government's response to ADL's consultation. We will work in close collaboration with the company, with trade unions and the UK Government to find practical solutions. We are not going to play politics with this situation. We will continue to explore every avenue to avoid job losses. I did speak with the Secretary of State for Scotland on the 4th of June. We agreed to establish a cross-governmental working group to discuss options to stimulate demand and avert job losses. The second meeting of that working group was held on Monday this week. They will meet again at the beginning of next week. We recognise ADL's historic leadership in championing that cause, including through their co-chairing of the Industry Advisory Group on the automotive sector and the subsequent Scottish Bus Decarbonisation Task Force, which published its pathway to net zero in 2022. That pathway describes a shared approach between government, operators, manufacturers and the finance and energy sectors to creating a net zero future for buses. The leadership of bus operators like First, Stagecoach and Lothian Buses in committing to go to net zero by 2035 is to be commended. That represents a wholesale change in the way that the bus sector operates, creating challenges but also new opportunities. I recognise that ADL cannot stand still. We want to support the company to innovate, to bring forward new products that reflect changes in the sector. In this government, we will continue to do all in our power to support Alexander Dennis and their highly skilled workers. I updated local elected members following the announcement. I spoke to Michael Matheson, MSP, a long-standing advocate for the company, and also to Brian Leishman, MP, and was very grateful for his constructive approach. On Monday, and then again yesterday, I spoke with the trade unions representing ADL workers in Scotland, both GMB and Unite, in separate meetings. They impressed upon me the positive engagement they were having with ADL, and they emphasised the importance of a pipeline of orders for Falkirk and Larbert as part of any solution being brought forward, and that is precisely why that is the solution that we are working through. I welcome the constructive approach of Unite, the Union and GMB Scotland, and we share an absolute commitment to do all that we can to save these jobs, and I intend to continue that dialogue every few days over the coming weeks. It's important that in this chamber, I think we put aside politics and work together during the 45-day consultation period to find practical solutions, hopefully well in advance of the 45-day consultation period, to support the business and safeguard production of zero-emission buses in Falkirk and Larbert. We are going to need to collaborate across this chamber with the UK Government and with procuring authorities to achieve success, and that is where I think there is an opportunity to find a solution. Members of this Parliament, particularly those with constituency interests, will want to be kept up to date, and I undertake to update members as frequently as they wish. And as we move to questions, I always recognise that members have a tendency to pose multiple questions in their speaking slot, not all of which I might recall in my efforts to answer them. And so I'm very happy to take an opportunity after this statement to go into more detail on the solutions that we are looking at and how we can collaborate to put those into practice. Thank you very much, Presiding Officer.
Thank you, Deputy First Minister. The Deputy First Minister will now take questions on the issues raised in her statement. I intend to allow around 20 minutes for questions, after which we'll move on to the next item of business. And I'd be grateful if all members who wish to put a question were to press their request to speak buttons now. And I call on Stephen Kerr.
Well, first of all, let me thank the Deputy First Minister for advance sight of her statement. And my heartfelt thoughts, as I'm sure all of us are with the workers and the families impacted by this terrible news. But let's be clear, I hear what the Deputy First Minister says about setting politics aside, but our role here is to scrutinise the performance of the Scottish Government. And this crisis didn't come out of the blue. And this statement, however skillfully delivered, cannot conceal the truth. The SNP Government was warned repeatedly for over a year and did nothing. When ADL asked for support, they were met with silence. When Scottish jobs were on the line, the Scottish Government were looking in another direction. When orders for buses were needed, those orders went to China. This wasn't a matter of subsidy control, it is a strategic neglect. Ministers now want to hide behind technicalities that a farthing's worth of creativity, an ounce of leadership could have overcome, because £90 million of public money went to ADL, and yet there was not even a guarantee of jobs. This isn't just about industrial failure, it's a betrayal of Scottish manufacturing, and after everything that's happened in that area of Scotland, it is a betrayal of the Forth Valley workforce. So I'll ask again plainly, why was public money under the SNP Government spent not in a factory employing skilled Scottish workers in Falkirk, but in a factory thousands of miles away in China?
Deputy First Minister.
Stephen Kerr may not want to believe what I've said, so perhaps he will believe what the company said in its letter. It was very clear how much it valued Scottish Government's support over the last few years, and I'll provide the statistics in a moment, and also cited quite clearly that a competitive imbalance in the UK market was partly the reason for this decision. So here are some figures. Since 2020, ADL have secured orders for more than 360 vehicles through Scottish Government funding programmes. I imagine my Labour colleagues may talk about Manchester, so let's compare that with how many they received, how much was ordered via Manchester, 160. They got all of the demand for double-decker buses through ScotZeb. So in terms of procurement, we have supported Alexander Dennis within the legal structures that we have to operate within. Now, ADL have been clear that the challenge across the UK is to do with a competitive imbalance. Public bodies must comply with procurement regulations, the Subsidy Control Act 2022, and other relevant legislation. Now, the other thing that we have done, because Stephen Kerr, I think, said that we have offered no support in the last year. I'm happy to be corrected if that was inaccurate. ADL has received £58 million of funding for zero-emission buses since 2020, and Scottish Enterprise has supported Alexander Dennis with £30.5 million in research and development support. So that is the investment that we have made. Now, we understand if we are going to find a route forward to support the workforce, which I intend to do, we have to be real about what the challenges are. And I've set out in my statement that the route to providing support is both in terms of looking at their cost base, So what additional support can we provide to help with productivity and lowering those costs, and ensuring that there is demand, which is why we are working with the procuring authorities, not just in Scotland, but further afield, to look at whether we can develop an order book there for them. So it is completely untrue to suggest that the Scottish Government has not acted over the course of the last few years to support local manufacturing, but quite clearly from the correspondence with ADL, they reference that competitive imbalance, which is something that we have to confront, recognise the root causes and work through. Thanks.
Thank you. And I call Daniel Johnson.
Thank you very much, Presiding Officer, and thank you to the Minister for advance sight of the notice. Just as a matter of record, last year under those contracts there were 252 bus awards, only 44 went to Alexander Dennis. And in terms of the figures that she's quoting in Manchester, they're since 2022 as compared to the figures that she's quoting in Scotland since 2020. But there was a cross-party meeting of MSPs with the workers from Alexander Dennis, and let me be very clear. I think two things are very clear. First of all, the urgency of the matter. If there's no action within weeks, jobs will be lost by August. And secondly, that we need orders on the book. So can I ask the Deputy First Minister, will the Scottish Government undertake an urgent review of the Subsidy Control Act? Because I understand that variation can be made through direct award, social value, and in terms of disregarding non-treaty state suppliers such as China. And that is on the advice from the Cabinet Office, and the Scottish Government may want to consult with mayoralties which I believe have used these aspects. What assessment has been made on over-reliance of a single country of manufacture for bus supply, given that bus transportation is critical transport infrastructure? And can I ask what steps will be taken to use the Scottish Government's convening power to convene bus operators, both private and public, to bring forward orders and facilitate that order book that is so badly needed by the 400 workers at Alexander Dennis?
Deputy First Minister.
Another helpful clarification, hopefully for Daniel Johnson. ADL secured orders for 72 of the 252 vehicles in ScotZeb 2. Now, a number of those were not able to be delivered by the company, so the final order for ADL was fewer. But I think it's important that the record reflects the truth in terms of the securing the orders. The second point is around, I think he asked me, although I'm quite astonished that he's asked me to review the Subsidy Control Act, which is obviously a reserved matter. What we are looking at is how to ensure that we can support domestic manufacturing, and that is why we have been engaging with the UK Government in order to do that. He will know that procurement rules are broadly aligned across Scotland and the UK at large. All awards of public contracts must comply with the provisions contained within procurement legislation. And so we are looking at all options, which is to directly answer his question. But I would appeal for members to consider what the company is citing specifically as its primary challenges, so that we don't go off and try and fix things that politicians have come up with trying to fix, and actually try and fix the issues that the company has identified as needing fixed.
Thank you. I call Michael Matheson, to be followed by Graham Simpson.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Over the course of last week, I had an opportunity to engage with the unions and also to visit the factory to speak to workers on Monday. And it's very clear from all of the discussions that I've participated in is that they do see a way through the short and medium-term challenges which the company is facing. But the only way that will be achieved is if the Scottish and UK governments can work together in order to find that way through. Can I therefore ask the Deputy First Minister two specific points? The first of which is, can she set out specifically what short-term measures the Scottish Government is presently looking at taking forward to address what is the short-term challenge they have with a lack of orders? And secondly, what action has been taken to address what is the fundamental challenge that the company are facing with an uneven playing field, where Chinese bus sector within the UK will go from 10% at the end of last year to 35% of the market this year? How are we going to deal with that challenge under the existing Subsidy Control Act and what measures are the UK Government saying that they will consider in order to address what is an uneven playing field that the company is facing?
Deputy First Minister.
I thank the member. So he's right to say that there is cause for hope in terms of looking at a way through these present challenges. And that is hopefully the gist of my statement, is that I think there are solutions there. They can only be delivered through collaboration, which is why I emphasise the point about needing to work with people and not resort to politics here. On the short-term measures, one of the challenges is that even if we are able to identify demand, there may be a short lead time before that demand can come to fruition. And so the member will know that we are exploring, for example, issues in and around furlough. Now, the Scottish Government has never run a furlough scheme. Obviously, the company was able to be part of a furlough scheme during the coronavirus, and we are looking at whether that would be useful to the company to retain its workforce. There is also scope at looking at whether there is other work that could be provided in terms of keeping the local workforce employed. So the primary short-term measure is how do we support the workforce whilst developing that order book. In terms of the fundamental challenges he has asked about, I have referenced the fact that we have to comply with public procurement regulations, subsidy control and so on. And so we are looking at how far we can push that, how far we can support local manufacturers whilst working with procuring authorities, in other words, people that actually own buses and run buses, to understand the demand there and bring that together with a support package for the company. So these are the issues that we are working through. These are the issues that we are consulting the unions on, and I'm very hopeful that we can find a solution if we collaborate.
Graham Simpson, to be followed by Michelle Thompson.
Thank you. The Deputy First Minister says ADL cannot stand still. Well, they're not standing still, they're moving to Scarborough. Now, she says she wants to support the company to innovate and bring forward new products. I think it's a bit late for that. She also says that she wants to collaborate. I agree with her on that. I think we should collaborate across this chamber, and she's busy talking to the Transport Secretary, but she might want to listen. I think we should collaborate across this chamber. She says she's formed a task force. I would like to know what the task force has discussed already. And to follow on from Michael Matheson's question, what specific things are the task force looking at doing? If she does want to collaborate, I suggest we get on with it in the next few days, because this company hasn't got long.
Deputy First Minister.
In terms of the task force, that is a group of officials between the UK Government and the Scottish Government looking at how far they can push the procurement rules and subsidy control. So it's entirely in line with what has been discussed. And on the point around collaboration, more than delighted to collaborate with Graham Simpson on the ideas piece. I imagine he doesn't procure buses either directly, so the collaboration I'm talking about is very much with procuring authorities of people who own and run buses. So that is pretty key. In terms of the innovation, I wouldn't be so quick to dismiss the point around innovation, because if you speak to the company, there are two elements to this. One is that they need an order book, and the second is that they need to be competitive. So the research and development investment that Scottish Enterprise made, for example, helps them to compete. And so the two elements are important: reducing the cost base and also ensuring that they have buses to build.
Michelle Thompson, to be followed by Richard Leonard.
In a statement of the 11th of June, the CEO of Alexander Dennis said, and I quote, "The stark reality is that current UK policy does not allow for the incentivisation or reward of local content, job retention and creation, nor does it encourage any domestic economic benefit." And they further made clear their commitment to the UK is dependent upon the content of the forthcoming UK Government's industrial strategy. To what extent has the Scottish Government been consulted in the preparation of said strategy, and particularly the mitigation of the issues Alexander Dennis outlined?
Deputy First Minister.
The member is right to quote from the letter and to talk about some of the changes that need to be made. Ultimately, this is about supporting Scotland's industrial base, the wider manufacturing base. We recognise the huge economic impact of the manufacturing sector on our economy, and ADL have long been a critical part of that. In terms of the UK Government's industrial strategy, I think is what she was referring to, we've obviously engaged with the UK Government to represent the interests of Scottish industries, and that is why we very quickly engaged with the UK Government on these matters, knowing full well that ADL had already been in touch with them.
Thank you. I'd be grateful if we could keep questions and responses concise. There's much interest and we are marching through time. Richard Leonard, to be followed by Jackie Dunbar.
Thank you, Presiding Officer, and can I remind members of my voluntary register of trade union interests. The Deputy First Minister's statement is more a defence of the Government's position than it is a plan of action to save these facilities and to save these workers' jobs. The fact is that the last two factories building buses in Scotland are facing closure at a time when there is no shortage of orders for new buses. It comes in the shadow of the closure of the Grangemouth refinery, and here we are again, facing a close and import strategy. When is the Government going to recognise that these are strategic national assets? When will we see a proper Scottish Government industrial strategy? When will the Government understand that manufacturing matters, rescue these jobs, prevent these closures, save this industry?
Deputy First Minister.
Well, manufacturing does matter, and can I absolutely wholeheartedly agree with one point that Richard Leonard makes, which is that it comes after the impact of Grangemouth, which is why we are focusing all our efforts, why we have been engaging with Unite GMB, with the company, with the UK Government, with procuring authorities to find a solution here. Now, I'm sorry he felt it was a defence of the Government's position, because as far as I'm concerned, it set out quite a clear roadmap for how we find a solution. The solution is found in securing orders and reducing costs through investment. And that, to me, is a pretty clear approach that we need to take. Now, there is work to do to deliver that, and I said in answer to Michael Matheson some of the points that might need to be made in the short term, but these are the points that I've been engaging with the unions about, so we are all on the same page, I think, in terms of what needs to be done. It's not all entirely within the Scottish Government's gift, but we are certainly recognising our convening power and our ability to bring people together. And if we can also get some support from the UK Government on things like the Subsidy Control Act and so on, then that is even more helpful.
Jackie Dunbar, to be followed by Mark Ruskell.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The prospect of job losses is extremely distressing for both workers and their families, and I welcome the Scottish Government's urgency in addressing this matter. Can the Deputy First Minister provide an update on the latest Scottish Government engagement with employees of Alexander Dennis and the trade unions to ensure their voices inform the Scottish Government's work in this regard?
Deputy First Minister.
Well, my approach has been to engage with the unions in a very open manner, in sharing with them the progress that we have made, our own thinking, and testing with them whether that is a route forward that they would support. And I think that's really important. We recognise that the workforce will be feeling quite uncertain at the moment. There is support available to the workforce. There will be support available to the workforce. But to be blunt, my priority right now is to find an avenue through this and to ensure that the company has a future. And I think I've set out the way in which I think that can be done.
Crossbill, to be followed by Willie Rennie.
Thank you. I'd just like to leave the party politics out of this for a moment and ask the Deputy First Minister about how we can actually support the workforce here, because there's a need to retain the workforce. There may also be a need to retrain the workforce, particularly in the short term. And I'm aware that Forth Valley College has received some funding support from both UK and Scottish governments to help the Grangemouth workers retrain and go into sustainable jobs for the future. What kind of approach, what kind of discussions has the DFM had with Forth Valley College about supporting the workers?
Deputy First Minister.
So the member is absolutely right to identify that the workforce are key in this regard. So we've been talking about innovation, but skills has to be a part of that. So my primary approach right now is working through the unions as representatives of the workforce, and I think that is key, and essentially taking my lead from them as to what the priorities are for them. And that is what has informed my approach so far in looking at how we both make investments that improve productivity as well as securing orders for the future. And those have been the two priorities identified. But he'll know from having engaged with us in the past that we stand ready to then support colleges, for example, to come in and provide retraining or skilling opportunity. And that is definitely an option here.
Willie Rennie, to be followed by Rona Mackay.
Flexibility around procurement rules and subsidy control are age-old problems. We've debated this in this chamber endlessly. So what is new about what the Deputy First Minister is setting out today in terms of flexibility in this area? Is this real hope that she's offering? Is this new flexibility? Can she spell out exactly what it is she's looking to find?
Deputy First Minister.
Well, what I'm looking to find is a means by which we can work with procuring authorities, people who actually own and run buses, in other words, to secure further orders for ADL. The Scottish Government doesn't own buses directly, which is why we need to collaborate. And some of the early conversations with the UK Government have been very helpful in that regard, to understand what mechanisms are available. Subsidy Control Act is a reserved area, so and it's also, you know, it's not brand new, but it's fairly recent in the post-Brexit years. So understanding what options are available to us, and that has been useful in exploring those issues. So I hope that answers this question in terms of what's new.
Rona Mackay, to be followed by Megan Gallagher.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I welcome the SNP Scottish Government's commitment to supporting public transport and operating sustainability, notably through schemes including the Scottish Zero Emission Bus Challenge Fund. Can the Minister speak further on any support received by Alexander Dennis through this scheme and its predecessor, the Scottish Ultra Low Emission Bus Scheme? And can the Deputy First Minister tell the Chamber how many orders Alexander Dennis has secured through the Scottish Government's funding programmes like ScotZeb?
Deputy First Minister.
Well, I'm happy to confirm that through the ScotZeb 2, ADL initially secured orders for 72 of the 252 buses, and they have received £58 million over the course of procuring and building buses since 2020. That is both through the Scottish Ultra Low Emission Bus Scheme and the Scottish Zero Emission Bus Challenge Fund.
Megan Gallagher, to be followed by Evelyn Tweed.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. And this, of course, is a double blow to the people of Falkirk and their families. So my thoughts are with them following what happened at Grangemouth and now with Alexander Dennis. But can I ask the Cabinet Secretary when the Scottish Government will publish an economic impact assessment for the area following the loss of 400 jobs of Grangemouth and now with up to 1,600 jobs on the line because Alexander Dennis have now been forced to relocate to Scarborough?
Deputy First Minister.
To lose the jobs, so all focus right now on saving those jobs.
Evelyn Tweed, to be followed by Paul Sweeney.
Thank you, Presiding Officer, and similarly to Megan Gallagher, to ask the Deputy First Minister what assessment has been made of the economic impact of these potential job losses, particularly following recent losses of other industrial jobs in Forth Valley.
Deputy First Minister.
Well, as I said to Megan Gallagher, my primary focus is on protecting the jobs, and that will be my priority.
Paul Sweeney, to be followed by Gordon MacDonald.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I think we're all behind the Scottish Government and UK governments as they try and save bus manufacturing in Scotland. And to that point about the forward order book, which is all that matters now, Section 12 of the new Procurement Act of 2023 in the UK, commenced in February this year, requires that contracting authorities must have regard to the importance of maximising public benefit when awarding contracts, which is a major strengthening compared to the Procurement Reform Scotland Act of 2014, which only requires authorities to consider social value. Will the Deputy First Minister consider how we strengthen the language in the 2014 Act and also take cognizance of the concerns raised by bus operators in Scotland, such as McGill's and First Glasgow, which have raised calls to concerns around ADL EV products compared to their Chinese equivalents, and how we can get a Kaizen group together with the operators to get Scottish Enterprise, Scottish Manufacturing Advisory Service around that, provide assurance and restore confidence in ADL's products.
I will just remind members of the requirement to have a virtual background. Deputy First Minister.
The UK Government's Procurement Act 2023 did introduce some reforms to procurement procedures in the rest of the UK. In some ways, it can be said to be catching up with the Procurement Reform Scotland Act 2014, because that placed a sustainable procurement duty on a public body before carrying out a regulated procurement to consider how the procurement process can improve the economic, social and environmental well-being of its area, facilitate the involvement of SMEs, the third sector and supported businesses, and promote innovation. The rest of the UK is bound by the same international agreements on procurement as Scotland, and in common with the rest of the UK, Scotland cannot legislate to allow for discrimination in favour of domestic bidders at the expense of other bidders with which a relevant trade agreement applies. And these are the issues that we are trying to grapple with, and I am very grateful for the tone of Paul Sweeney's question in terms of being behind both governments. I think that is very helpful, and I'm grateful.
And Gordon MacDonald.
I refer to my register of interests, where I spent 22 years in the bus industry. Can the Deputy First Minister confirm that the Scottish Government does not purchase or own any buses, but provides a grant to bus operators to offset the additional cost between a diesel bus and a zero-emission bus?
Deputy First Minister.
Yes, and that's precisely why we are working with procuring authorities. Thanks.
Thank you. That concludes the ministerial statement. The next item of business is consideration of Business Motion 18035 in the name of Jamie Hepburn on behalf of the Parliamentary Bureau on changes to business. Any member who wishes to speak to the motion should press their request to speak button now, and I call on Jamie Hepburn to move the motion.
Move, Presiding Officer.
Thank you, Minister. No member has asked to speak to the motion. Therefore, the question is that motion 18035 be agreed. Are we all agreed? The motion is therefore agreed. The next item of business is consideration of Parliamentary Bureau Motion 18024 on committee membership, and I ask Jamie Hepburn on behalf of the Parliamentary Bureau to move the motion.
Move, Presiding Officer.
Thank you, Minister. The question on this motion will be put at decision time, and there are 3 questions to be put as a result of today's business. The first question is that Amendment 18016.1 in the name of Tess White, which seeks to amend motion 18016 in the name of Shirley Ann Somerville on progressing National Advisory Council on Women and Girls recommendations on equality, be agreed. Are we all agreed? No. The Parliament is not agreed, therefore we'll move to a vote, and there will be a short suspension to allow members to access digital voting.